Welcome to CannaBiz with Canna-Chris. I'm Chris Nanny, also known as Canna-Chris, and I'm joined by my co-host, Austin Slutsky. This is our first episode, and I'm excited to dive into our show with our guest, who, by the way, is the COO of an international cannabis association. But first, Austin, let's discuss some cannabis events that have happened this week.
Thanks for starting us off, Chris. Today, I want to talk about one of the biggest sporting events of the year, and it's Running with Cannabis last week.
Ooh, are you talking about the Super Bowl?
Yes, sir, I am. The Super Bowl is known for its jaw-dropping plays and unforgettable moments, but for a lot of people out there and around the world, the commercials are more important than the game itself.
I mean, honestly, they always have quality commercials, and you go to YouTube, there's always a top 10, Super Bowl commercials.
I mean, who doesn't want to see a samurai fling that Ninja Star Dorito across the screen?
Oh, I love Doritos commercials. They always know what to do.
But unfortunately today, we are talking about the ad that wasn't in the Super Bowl.
Oh, so is this going to go back to Acreage Holdings?
Yes, sir. So Acreage Holdings had planned to release a 30-second advertisement focusing on advocating for medical marijuana, but they were denied.
Wow, I mean, I could really get behind this message. Why were they denied?
So the NFL and CBS said that they're not currently accepting cannabis-relating advertisement, and the ad itself wasn't consistent with the network's advertising policies.
Okay, so that's pretty tough. So what's going to happen now?
Well, I mean, if you look at the actual tone and content of the ad itself, it doesn't fit the lighthearted comedic tone that Super Bowl commercials typically have. They would probably have to adjust the message they're trying to portray if they do want to become advertised in something like the Super Bowl.
I see what you're saying. So, maybe in everyday TV, you might see commercials like these starting to pop up, but on special occasions, you need to tailor it to that event.
Yeah, all you have to do is kind of narrow your focus and really try to go for the market they're trying to attract.
Okay, well, hey, I got something that might lift your spirits up a little bit. I got some good news.
What do you got for me, Chris?
Israel just approved cannabis exports.
Oh, so what does that mean?
Really good news for us all around. They approved exporting processed cannabis products.
So that would be oils, topicals, and edibles?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Pretty much everything you can imagine except the actual flower itself.
Yeah, I can imagine. That would be a pain to ship.
The safety hazards, mold, fungus, all that stuff. So now Israel is one of the first two countries to join others like the Netherlands and Canada to start internationally exporting medical cannabis products.
Wow, that sounds like a great business idea and great for Israel government as well.
Glad you brought that point up. They just released a report, and by they, I mean the Israeli government, estimating that they'll get about 1 billion shekels, billion with a B, this year in tax revenue from their exports.
Wow, that sounds like a lot.
We just ran the numbers, and it's actually $273 million in U.S. terms.
That would be a lot of Super Bowl ads.
Let's wrap it all around and bring it back to our home state, Ohio. What's going on in Ohio today?
So we have some great news coming out of my home state of Ohio. Ohio began its medical marijuana program a little over a week ago. Now sales of flower are being offered in Canton, Sandusky, and Wintersville, Ohio.
Talk to me more about these sales. How are they doing?
They are doing really well so far. There have been over $333,000 of sales in a little over 2 weeks, and that equates to over 46 pounds of medical marijuana.
Well, that's a lot of patients getting that help.
Yeah, that's a Super Bowl.
You're absolutely right there. Stay tuned. Right after this quick break, we'll introduce our guest, and she's going to talk about how she used her MBA to break into the industry. Welcome back. Coming on to our show today is an incredible woman. She's an accomplished MBA graduate from the University of Virginia and now the COO of the America Israel Cannabis Association. Sara Gluck, welcome to the show.
Oh, you're too kind. It is so great to be here.
It's a pleasure having you.
Thanks for coming on the show today. So, first off, tell us about you and how you got into the industry.
Yeah, like many nice Jewish girls, I never anticipated going into this industry. I very much grew up anticipating being a businesswoman in finance or consulting or consumer packaged goods, but never cannabis. So to go back into my story a little bit, I was a healthcare entrepreneur for a few years after undergrad. I ran a company for a number of years and decided that I really wanted to go get my MBA, go back to school, and fill in some of those knowledge gaps that I might have been missing. So fortunately, I got into the University of Virginia, Darden. I was in beautiful Charlottesville for 2 glorious years. So, I'm here in Darden, figuring out if I want to go into finance or consulting or, do the typical MBA thing. And I had an internship in Minnesota. I could tell you a lot about cheese, but I could also tell you that consumer packaged goods wasn't necessarily for me at the time. So I started looking into technology because technology loves entrepreneurs. It moves fast. It changes quickly. And I recruited for, the Microsofts and Salesforces of the world. And I decided to visit Denver. Ibotta, which is a great startup here in Denver, sponsored a tech trip in which they invited MBAs from, top 25 schools to visit Denver and learn about the startup culture. There's a number of startups that we visited, but one of the things that I made a purpose of doing was to go and visit a dispensary, right? When in Rome.
I mean, who doesn't do that whenever they go?
Right. I mean, because you hear about what a dispensary may be like. You think that there are guns and bars and
aren't there bodyguards too?
Right, like, the security guards with AK-47s and that wasn't the case at all. And I had to learn that for myself. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to go. But the second and more personal reason why I went to a dispensary is because I have a disease called psoriatic arthritis. It is an autoimmune disease. And basically, my immune system acts in overdrive and it attacks itself. And that leads to a lot of inflammation. About 5 years ago, I was in so much pain that I couldn't walk down a New York City block. And I used biologics and they definitely work. I was tired of injecting myself and having to get a TB test every year and the $5,000 a month bill that my insurance would get. It's just not sustainable.
Really? It sounds like a load of fun to me.
It is so much fun. So I went to the bud tender. Hey, I'm having so much fun injecting myself. I would like to not. Could you recommend anything to, alleviate some of my pain? And he recommended a nice solve and a sugar cookie to help me relax. Honestly, it was the first time in a long time that my body felt relaxed and I wasn't thinking about the pain.
And Sarah, real quick, can you tell us what a salve is?
Yeah, a salve is a topical, right? Okay. You rub it on a localized point. You do not get high off of it. It's really just a localized alleviation, let's say.
So really good for pain management, especially in joints or any sort of physical ailment.
Yeah, she did mention it was non-psychoactive as well, which I know a lot of elderly really are looking for in their products nowadays.
Yeah, great point, guys. I mean, sometimes you're 70 plus years old. You don't want to be stoned.
Okay, so tell us a little bit more about how this journey helped transfer you from there to now the COO of the America Israel Cannabis. That's just an insane story.
Definitely not a typical story. Was not a straight line. It was very much a roller coaster. I essentially came back from that trip to Denver and declared to the world that I think I want to enter this crazy cannabis industry that is very scary and nobody could really help me with, right? If I were to go into finance or consulting, my school would be able to help so much. But this is very much on my own. I came out to my parents in hey, mom and dad, I want to be a drug dealer. And my mom was like, what am I going to tell my friends? And my dad was like, there's an ETF and they're investing a lot of money. This makes sense.
I've heard that story with a lot of people, especially, I'll also give you a personal example. When I first told my family I was involved in the cannabis industry, they thought the same thing. Say, hey, Chris, are you a drug dealer now? And, the answer is no, but I want to see it grow legally.
Yeah, so I get back to school. I graduate without a job. I was completely jealous of all my friends that had a cushy salary and a nice signing bonus. And here I was without a job going into this federally illegal industry. So I did what I thought was the best move, which I agree with, is to go to a career fair. I went to a career fair and unfortunately I did not know what I was getting into. I did not do my due diligence. I was very much in the MBA mindset in which you suit up and you walk in with a purpose and you say give me a job. And I don't think they took too kindly to that. No, it does not work.
Scratch that off the list.
Yes. So,
I have noticed within the cannabis industry, it is a little more informal, a little more relaxed. People just seem to get along a little bit. Maybe it might be smoking weed, who knows? But
I think it's definitely more relaxed. In Denver, we call it there's, Denver business casual, which is like cowboy boots and jeans. So that's more on the cannabis dress code, let's say, because the cannabis industry very much evolved from Colorado and California, which we know are a lot more relaxed than, let's say, New York City.
The amount of regulations, going from a little more liberal to a very heavily regulated industry.
Yeah. At the job fair, I got turned away from everybody and realized that I needed to change my tune and kind of listen to Kendrick Lamar and, sit down and be humble, right? Because, I knew nothing about this industry, but for the past 2 years, I was being wined and dined by Fortune 500 companies and, told that, the world is your oyster, alumni are in successful positions. And I kind of went in with that mindset, and that's not what I should have done. And I think, we could go into recommendations a little later, but I think one of the biggest recommendations that I have is to realize that you're new in the industry, right? You haven't been growing weed in your backyard since the 80s. You're very much an outsider in this industry. And in order to gain trust, you need to be vulnerable and, ask questions instead of telling everybody what they're doing wrong, which is what I was doing. So, I moved to Denver, without a job. I spoke to everybody that I could. I also drove for Uber. I don't know many MBAs that drive for Uber, yet here I was. And the best thing about driving for Uber is that I had a captive audience. So I would literally hand people my business card and tell them, hey, I moved here for the cannabis industry. And thankfully, I met a few people that way, right? It's all about networking.
Yeah, just the way you form connections. You never know how you're going to make them.
You never know. So whether that's reaching out in the Uber car that you're driving or on a Facebook group that you're a part of. I am part of this Women in Cannabis group for Denver. And I posted on there saying, hey, I moved to Denver a few months ago. I'm looking for a job. Could anybody help me? And that led to a few interviews. I interviewed for literally every job that I could, from a dispensary bud tender to store manager to plant manager to salesperson. I just wanted to get into this industry in any which way I could. And fortunately, one of the job interviews through that was with this lady who's now one of my mentors, and she is planning a huge hemp conference in Denver. So I had the opportunity to really learn about hemp, this completely other side of cannabis that a lot of people forget. And it was also a way for me to get that kind of stamp of approval. And once, you're in this industry, then you're in. But before, you're very much an outsider going into this industry that was a few years ago illegal. So people do have their guards up.
So what kind of first steps can someone take to go from being outside the industry to a part of the industry?
Yeah. So I think one of the best first steps that you could do is to go to a conference. There are conferences every day, it seems like. Go to the conference, go to the workshop, take notes, right? Really learn about this plant, learn about the history, and learn about who the players are. And then I recommend walking the floor, chatting with different companies, explaining who you are, that you want to enter the industry, you want to learn, ask them what they do. I think this is a good thing for two reasons. The first is that you get to understand all the aspects of the industry, because a lot of these conferences, they'll have everybody from investments to grow equipment to software. So you really get an idea of all the facets that go into this industry. Another reason why I recommend going to a conference is that companies that exhibit at conferences usually have a budget. right? If you're looking for a job, you need somebody that could pay you. And these companies are frankly more likely to have recruiting needs in the future if they're investing money in conferences in order to grow.
So, Sarah, what's one way, let's say someone brand new to the industry, kind of like yourself earlier, walks into an expo, what should they do? What should they say to a potential employer to get their attention?
Yeah, so don't do what I do, and don't lead with your MBA, right? Lead with your passion. I always tell people to really think about the reasons why they want to join the industry. If it's because it's the hot topic of the moment, or if it's because of money, you should probably do something else, right? Like if you're not willing to be the face of this industry, if you're not willing to lobby, maybe in a few years this industry will be for you.
You know, I completely agree with you on that. This industry is founded on advocacy. You know, just going back into the 90s with California, it was founded based on advocates. And then you see it slowly happening across the U.S., actually from the West Coast now to the East, form of advocacy and legalization. And even, you know, further on down, we're seeing second waves of advocacy now for social equity programs. So I think you're absolutely right, you know, right on the money with that one.
Right. So, you know, it's really finding your passion within this industry. Many people do have some sort of medical story. And if you don't have one, that's fine. But it cannot just be about money. It could be about conquering a new industry. It could be about how cannabis could be this great social equalizer. It could be about how you're passionate about healthcare and alternative medicine. So really lead with that passion and even say, hey, I'm new. Can I pick your brain?
Well, Austin, I think that's some good news for us, because she said as long as it's not just money. And as law students, she said not just. So as long as we put an and to it, we'll be good. That's a gold one. Okay, and so as far as people getting into the industry, let's say they get their initial interview set up. What can they expect going into that interview? How should they prepare for it?
Oh, gosh. I think my first cannabis interview, I was so ill prepared. I had no idea what to expect. It really depends on the company. First of all, if they're getting an interview, congratulations, mazel tov. That is an amazing feat. Based on, you know, HR people that I speak to, for every one application, there are hundreds, if not thousands of applicants. So kudos for getting that job interview.
Just to clarify, this is for the cannabis industry. There are thousands of people for one job.
Yes.
That was astounding.
Yes. Yeah. I remember for one interview I had, there were 2 positions and they got 1,500 applicants.
Wow. Oh, Lord.
Yeah. And I'm like, wait, how'd I get here? Right? You know, because I mean, a lot of people that have a lot more experience than you or I that have worked for large corporations and large multinational organizations are trying to get into this industry.
You know, I've noticed that there's a big trend going on right now, transitions, I guess you could say, from, you know, these high-level executives realizing there's a golden opportunity in the cannabis industry. There's a huge void, and anyone can really fill it as long as you have the skill set to do it and the drive and the passion.
Right, absolutely. If you've operated a grow operation in tomatoes, agriculture, or laundry detergent, you could apply those skills in cannabis. You know, really let the world know what you want to do when you're ready to tell them. Really think about if this industry is for you. You know, I say this, that everyone in this industry is still very much a federal criminal. So if you're okay with that, you could continue on. I got my job through my hairdresser. So really letting everyone know what your intentions are is one of the biggest pieces of advice.
Now, question with that, let's say someone brand new in the industry says, hey, I want to be part of the cannabis industry. Can they expect any repercussions from that? Even like the stigmatization of it? Do you think that's still a thing in 2019?
Yes, I do. I was at the airport the other day and talking to a gentleman at the bar, and he's like, wait, you're in the cannabis industry? You don't look like you're in the cannabis industry, right? And, you know, there's still this notion about what the cannabis industry is. I do feel like when I do speak about work, it's a little difficult with friends and family when I'm talking about planning a Hanukkah marijuana party and they're talking about balancing a budget for the year, which is all things that we do, but that's the biggest difference, is that my events have cannabis and their events have alcohol.
Yeah, that's one thing that a lot of people don't really realize, is that even though it's the cannabis industry, the industry is all around cannabis, and everything needs to be in place just like any other business.
Absolutely. I mean, my duties as COO, sure, yes, I plan events, and sometimes I talk about cannabis at those events, but we're an organization that really tries to connect Israel and America, right? So I'm talking with investors, looking at pitch decks, right? So these are all things that you learn as an MBA. You learn financials, you learn communication, right? You learn marketing. You don't learn about cannabis, which is I think the biggest difference of my job and my peers.
Yeah, it's great hearing about how you can connect everything you learned in your MBA, apply that networking, and then use it in your job. So we want to thank you for coming on to the show today. We had a great time interviewing you, and wish you and the association the best of luck moving forward.
Thank you guys so much. If you ever want to talk about Israel, check us out at www.aicannabis.com.
Thank you, Sarah. And once again, remember just to stay warm out there. I know you're in Miami. I hope it's warm down there too, but
It's nice.
I can imagine. You enjoy the rest of your day.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. Take care.
Hey, what's going on here? Hey, get your hands off of me. Hey, I want a lawyer. I want a lawyer right now.
You know, Austin, we have a lawyer coming on our show next time, but he's not just any kind of lawyer. I heard he's a bit of a celebrity within the cannabis industry. Can you tell me something about him?
So, he's notoriously known for his Instagram and LinkedIn videos. He's one of the Pot Brothers at Law, Mark Wasserman. He'll be joining us to talk about the mistakes startups in the industry make and how you can avoid them.
Ooh, you know, I really like that. I think I've seen a few videos of him before. I think I've seen a few, maybe him and his brother. I think he has a catchphrase or something, right?
I plead the fifth.
Well, I guess we're just going to have to wait until next week to find out what that means. Thanks for listening to CannaBiz with Canna-Chris. Don't forget to like, follow, and share this episode, and let us know what you think in the comments below. I'm Canna-Chris.
And I'm Austin Slutsky.
We'll see you next week.